This is episode 38 on the Live Blissed Out podcast. The neuro-emotional technique, or N.E.T, is a mind-body approach to help stress-related conditions. Did you know that Grey's Anatomy used N.E.T on an episode in April of 2019, and it worked fabulously for the doctor? He saw results immediately. Hello, action takers. Welcome to Live Blissed Out, a podcast where I have authentic conversations with business owners and subject matter experts to help us get the scoop, the 411, and the lowdown on a variety of topics. Tired of hesitating or making decisions without having the big picture? Want to be in the know? Then this is the place to go. I'm your host, Marissa Houston, helping achieve bliss through awareness and action. Thanks for joining me. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Sending a coffee mugshot shout out to Debbie S. in Denver, Colorado. Thanks for filling my coffee cup, Debbie, and being such a cool bean. If you'd like to help keep me fueled, head over to liveblissed.com and click on the Caffeinate Me tab to give me a boost and redeem your bonus as a thank you for supporting the show. My guest is Dr. Debbie O'Reilly, a human and animal chiropractor, acupuncturist, and holistic healer at Vibrant Energy Healing Center. She has chosen to devote her life to complementary healing arts in order to assist people in a partnership for health. Her practice is unique due to the many techniques she has to offer. All the techniques are synergistic and enhance one another. She believes it's important to enhance one's life through patient-doctor partnering. She gets a great sense of accomplishment when she sees someone's health improve over time. She truly believes in holistic healing and endeavors to enhance her knowledge base regularly. Mention Live Blissed Out podcast to receive 10% off your first visit for N.E.T. To learn more, visit vibrantenergy.com. Hi, Dr. Debbie. It's so nice to have you here today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me to be here.
Let's be honest, people are very stressed at the moment. There's a lot of things that are happening in people's lives that A, they didn't expect, and B, are unfamiliar with, and it's causing them anxiety because they have to think outside the box. Their routines have been turned upside down, and essentially people are stressed, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You have a technique that is called N.E.T, and I'll be honest, I've never heard of it before. So I'd really like to dive into this conversation by starting with, what is N.E.T?
N.E.T is short for neuro-emotional technique. It was founded in the late 1980s by Dr. Scott and Deb Walker of Encinitas, California. They started the technique back in 1988 when the first class was taught. What it is it's a technique that uses muscle testing, or applied kinesiology is the technical term for it, in finding and removing neurological and meridian imbalances. So meridian from acupuncture, neurological from our nervous system. We call these imbalances neuro-emotional complexes. The neuro-emotional complex was defined as being a subjective maladaptation syndrome adopted by the human organism in response to a real or perceived threat to its aspect of survival. Because one's memory of an event may or may not correspond with an actual or historical reality, N.E.T practitioners always consider the event associated with an N.E.C, or again that neuroemotional complex, to be the patient's emotional reality. So there's a story from one of my colleagues. They were at a seminar with their brother, and he went up on stage and he was getting work done, and he was talking about his fear about his father and how his father would beat him, and it was just this horrible situation. And he talked about this age of 4 or 5, and he started to relay the story, and his brother interrupted, and he said, "No, your father didn't beat you for no reason. Your father beat you because you got too close. We were at a campsite. You were too close to the fire. You caught on fire, and he threw you down on the ground, and he was patting the fire out. He wasn't beating you because you were a bad person. He was beating you to save your life." And so that's that whole emotional reality. In his mind, he's this little little boy who didn't understand what was happening, but all of a sudden he's thrown on the ground and he's beaten, in his mind, for no reason. And he didn't have the intellectual comprehension of being able to say, oh, I'm on fire, right? But now as an adult, thankfully, he got the story correct because his brother happened to be in the room at the time to tell him the truth. And so now he has a whole different perspective about his father. His father didn't beat him. Father saved his life. So that's kind of that thought process of an emotional reality. So we confuse things, not on purpose, not because we don't care about our family members, our friends, or whoever, bosses, whatever. It's that things get distorted. And so with N.E.T, we use this technique to kind of resolve some of that and clear it out of our bodies. We use the phrase issues in the tissues. And what that means is that our emotions get stuck in our body and we have to have a way to get them out. Normally, right, every day we have things that happen to us that get us upset. Traffic, the phone call, the missed appointment, whatever it is that kind of stresses us out. Well, we have these every single day. If we hung on to them every single day, our bodies couldn't take all that stress. But under normal circumstances, we go to bed, we relax, we watch TV, we do something to unwind, and everything is fine the next day. But sometimes, because we have a physical problem, our nutrition is off, other things are happening, it gets stuck in our body. And so that's what we work on with N.E.T. Now, it's not always something that you know of consciously, which is the beauty of N.E.T, is through muscle testing, or what they technically call applied kinesiology, that helps to pull it out of the body. It's stuck in the subconscious. So you have memory of an event. So if we're talking about a lemon, and I said, okay, we're going to talk about this lemon. It's a really bright, beautiful lemon. I just picked it off the tree, and I'm describing it to you. I'm just talking about it. And I put it by your nose, and you can smell that lemon, and you know what a lemon smells like. And now I'm going to cut that lemon, and I'm going to give you a piece to suck on. You're already salivating because you have the memory of what the lemon smells like. You have the memory of what it tastes like. You have that memory also of those emotions. And when you put the right triggers with it, it comes up. And that's how N.E.T kind of works, is we get to that emotion, and then we use either tapping on the spine, which is kind of the chiropractic way to do it, or we use acupuncture pulse meridians along with some body points that help to release that emotion while we think about it. And so then the body can release that emotion. It no longer has to hold on to it, and the patient starts to feel better.
I know that most of us, for example, have heard of chiropractors and acupuncturists and those types of practitioners. Mm-hmm. How do we know where to look for a N.E.T administrator, somebody who practices N.E.T? Like, how do I find somebody like you?
So the first place that everybody kind of looks at the website for is the Neuroemotional Techniques main website, which is all one word, netmindbody.com. And there it will have a tab that says Find a Practitioner. And you can find a practitioner in all different countries, all different parts of the United States. To be an N.E.T practitioner, you have to be a master's degree or higher level. Typically, they're chiropractors, acupuncturists, marriage and family therapists, medical doctors, psychologists. Those kind of people are typically the ones that do N.E.T. In order to do this, you have to be licensed. You don't have to have a psychological degree, like most chiropractors have studied psychology, but you have to have a lot of compassion. You have to have a lot of empathy for people, because patients are going to be coming in with all kinds of stories. I always say the office is like Vegas. What happens in the office stays in the office. So there's no chance. I'm not going to be going to my next cocktail party and talking about what happened with George in his N.E.T session. It is a situation of safety. It is a situation of trust, and you have to have that with a patient. And so that's why Dr. Walker's both believed that it had to be very high professional level people that were learning N.E.T.
So let's say that somebody is listening right now and they go to the netmindbody.com website and they read up on N.E.T. And as assuming they are stressed and they think this might really help me now, what is something that they can expect from a procedure? Let's say they contact the practitioner and they say, I would like to schedule a session with you, and they go to that doctor's office. What exactly does that look like? What can they expect when they go to this scheduled meeting?
So I can't speak for other practitioners, but when they come to see me, which should be very similar to most other practitioners, the patient comes in, you're going to get a medical history, et cetera, and you're going to find out what the problem is. So there's two ways that you can do N.E.T. One, you can do it on a physical problem. Let's say I have a shoulder that just won't get better, and I get it adjusted, and I get acupuncture, and it's just still stuck, and it hurts all the time, and I can't figure out what the problem is. So we can go through and check it to see whether or not there's an emotional component related to that shoulder. Well, let's say that they don't have a physical problem. Let's say that they have money issues. Everybody's going to have money issues after this pandemic. And so no matter how hard I try, I just can't make more than $75,000 a year. Okay, well, why is that? So we can go in and find out, is it a fear of success or is it a fear of failure? And a lot of times on those kinds of situations, you find out that the family thought process was that rich people were evil, that they did evil things to get all that money. So if you were to go against your family's moray of money equals evil, then you would become evil. So you can't make more money. So we go through and we find, through the muscle testing, what is at this level today. What is today's issue? I'm afraid of success. And so we go and we find all the things about why you're afraid of success. Well, I'm afraid that if I'm successful, that everybody will borrow money from me and that people will come out of the woodwork and that I won't have any money left. Or if I'm successful, I'm not going to have enough time for my family and that I'm going to be working 80, 90, 100 hours a week and I won't have any time to relax and whatever the issue is. And then you go and you muscle test and you see if there's a more original time being childhood. So is it from birth? Is it from 3, 5, 7, 12, 16, whatever? You find that age, and it might not be in childhood. It might be in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, however old you are, but it could be before present day. And then you find what that's about. And again, you're asking questions through muscle testing. You're asking the body's memory banks to pull up the information for you. And you keep asking questions and muscle testing it. And then when you find the core, the bottom, you peel it all away, you get all those emotions, you get the patient feeling that fear, feeling that grief, whatever that emotion is. Do you remember being 3 and your dad running over your cat that you loved with all your heart? It was an accident, but that it just tore your little soul to shreds. And do you remember that? They may cry, they may get really angry. In my practice, they close their eyes and they hold the points and they breathe through it and they go through the memory of that. And I help them process that memory as they're going through it. I don't talk a lot, and I don't allow them to talk a lot because the more we talk, they're saying, oh yeah, and then my dad came in and he was just crushed. No, you can't talk about it now. I just want you to feel what's happening in that session. I want you to feel what it felt like to be that 3-year-old little girl just sobbing, watching your dead cat on the sidewalk, and that it was just horrific for you. And you just kind of process it through. I always joke that I have stock in Kleenex because I have to keep a ton of Kleenex in my practice. And I just say, however many tears you cry, you just go ahead and cry because this is the most safe you're ever going to be. And then we just let it all go through. We clear it all out. And then at the end, we see if there's anything else that might be. So maybe we got the anger and the grief and the fear, but then there was low self-esteem that we didn't catch the first time through. And so you feel like he purposely did this to you. He didn't. It was an accident. But again, you're looking at it through a child's eyes and not through an adult's eyes. An adult adult totally can process it. A child doesn't have reasoning until age 7. And so a lot of the things that get stuck in us are before age 7 because we don't have the skills to go 1 + 1 is 2. And so we clear that all out, and then we see if there's anything else that we need to do to help support that. And that might be some homeopathic, which are made specifically for the emotional clearing. There's sprays that we give. We test for those. We test for nutrition, if there's some nutritional deficiency that will help to support this clearing. What I usually tell patients after that has all cleared is let it go. When you leave here, leave it in the office. Don't go home and go call everybody you know, tell them all this stuff, rehash it, rethink it, because then you're just putting it right back in. You need to let it go, relax, go take a hot bath, go take a walk, go ride your horse, do whatever you need to do, and chill. Let your body actually just process it like it needs to process. You can see it right then and there. You might see it in the next couple of days, but it's usually pretty quick that you can start feeling shifts and things. Now, if it's a money thing, I do a lot of stuff with money because everybody's got money issues, whether you're a millionaire or poor as a pauper. I had one particular patient. Every single year he went to China and Asia, and he had these big conferences, and they were worth millions of dollars. And he came every single year without fail. Even though he, quote unquote, didn't believe in my voodoo, he would come regardless because he knew if he came, he sold really, really big money at that conference. And he came every year without fail. And every year we would laugh about the fact that, I know, you're just here because your wife makes you come. And he said, yeah. But he did it every single time. And he would always shift whatever it was. It ended up becoming his, talisman. This is my good luck charm. If I go see Dr. Deb before I go to Asia, I'm going to make even more money.
It kind of reminds me of a mind reset, doesn't it? It's almost like part of it is being aware and also kind of just looking into yourself and trying to figure out what is causing the issue, and then just resetting everything so that you can, like you said, leave it out there and move on rather than let it dwell inside of you.
Yeah, this doesn't replace therapy. There are times where you're right there with that patient crying because of all their pain that they have and that they've held on to and how it's affecting their life. And this is a way to help process that out so they don't have to keep carrying it and having all that pain. But you still may need to go to therapy. I can't do it all doing N.E.T, but there are things that we find in N.E.T that you might not get to in therapy because it might not come up, but yet it's a huge point for that person. I always joke, I'm the oldest in my family, and of course, when my number 2 sister was born, that ruined my life. I was no longer the star of the show. And so I joke with my sister all the time that when I have N.E.T sessions, she's the star of the N.E.T sessions because she ruined my life. And so we joke about that, right? I mean, intellectually, as the oldest child and as an adult and as a doctor and everything, I understand that this is not her fault. It was just the way that all things happen in families. Every single sibling hates the one underneath it and, and all that kind of stuff. But hopefully you get over it.
This is complementary to other forms of treatment, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Who decides how often they need to come? Is it the patient who says, I think I'm ready for another session? Or is it kind of like a sequence of sessions that you recommend in the beginning and then they follow up at a certain time? Is it similar to like when you go to a chiropractor or an acupuncturist where when you're feeling like you're hurting, you go see them? Or is it more of there's a set amount of visits that you have to put in front of you first before you can figure out, I'm going to take a step back for now and then maybe call in 6 months?
Everybody practices differently. The way that I do it in my practice is see how this feels. You're going to be processing. You can come as often as you want. I like to have at least 2 weeks in between sessions because I want them to be able to process it, and especially if they needed nutrition or homeopathics, I need them to be able to get that in their system and really kind of process that out, because otherwise otherwise we're just kind of churning up the same garbage. And I'd rather just kind of see, okay, well, that got flushed out, so now let's see what we got now. A lot of times also I give people homework. So let's say that we're working on something and the ex-husband keeps coming up. Well, before you come the next time, and there's always 2 ways in my practice that you can do N.E.T. You can do an hour-long session, which is the one that I always say is the best because we can just keep going and going. An N.E.T. session in and of itself, if things aren't too super complicated, can be done in 5 to 10 minutes. So in an hour, you can do 6 to 10 sessions. And so if you're prepared, and that's what I always tell people, it's your money. Don't waste it. Let's hit this hard, and let's be prepared to work. So if you want to get stuff about money, your ex-husband, your kids, your school, your whatever, then write down all these different thoughts you have about it. I was upset about this. I hated that. I can't stand this. Whatever it is, right? And if it's money, talk about all of those things. Free-forming thought to let it flow and see what kind of comes out as you're writing. And then bring that sheet in. Doesn't mean that we're going to read right off of it, but it'll give me a place to start that I can start probing and asking questions and testing you and seeing what starts coming up. And then we can find out and dig a little bit deeper. The other option that people have is to come for a 2 N.E.T. session, which usually is about a half hour. I leave it to the patient. Other clinicians may do it way differently than me. And typically, by the time the patient is done with that session, they are already in their mind starting to figure out, sign me up for 2 weeks. I want to come back in 2 weeks. And then sometimes it's also, well, the stuff that we pulled up was really difficult, was really painful. So maybe I don't want to come right away. Maybe I just want to come in 4 weeks. I'll see you in a month. That's okay. There's no judgment because it's your stuff. You know your body better than I do, and I know how I process. I don't know how you process. Even if I've known you for 20 years, I may not know how you process that particular session. I leave it free-flowing for them. There are clients that I've had that do both the therapy as well as the N.E.T. together, and then I always say, okay, now when you go to see your therapist, make sure you talk about this that came up in the session. So we can work really symbiotically together and we can help each other. Or they say, oh, you know what? When I was with my therapist last week, this came up. Can you check that?
And if a listener wants to know, okay, is there any research out there that demonstrates the validity of N.E.T? Where can they go to access that information?
You would go to the One Foundation, O-N-E. Our N.E.T Effect is what it stands for. It's the organization that we do all of the research about N.E.T. There are 30 published peer-reviewed research papers that are done by N.E.T. 2 of the more recent ones, one is neuroemotional technique reduces symptoms of traumatic stress in cancer survivors. We had beautiful results with that one. And the other one was the effect of neuroemotional technique on chronic low back pain. They've done plenty of research to prove the muscle tests and that is valid and that's correct and usable. There are lots of people in the medical profession that poo-poo us and say that we're all a bunch of quacks and we don't know what we're doing and it's all a bunch of voodoo. But it's all been researched and it's not in our own journals. It's in medical scientific journals and it's all peer-reviewed, which means that other doctors have looked at that and said, yeah, that's very good research. They did a good job. We work with one of the N.E.T. practitioners is Dr. Daniel Monti, who is an M.D. psychiatrist in Philadelphia, and he is our big head of the research. He does a lot of it, and they've done a bang-up job on the research. It's been going on for over 20 years, and they've done over 30 papers. So it's a very good, well-documented validity of N.E.T.
So, Dr. Debbie, if they want to learn more about this, if this sounds interesting to them and they would like to dive into more information from you, how do they get a hold of you?
So to get a hold of me, you can go to my website, which is vibrantenergy.com. all one word, and I've been practicing for over 25 years. Third level certified N.E.T practitioner, which is the highest level you can go. I've been doing N.E.T for over 20 years. It's a very big part of my practice. If you mention the podcast on Live Blissed Out, you can get 10% off your first visit.
I want my listeners to have access to things that perhaps they would not even know existed, and then also get a better understanding of what those things are so that they are more aware. They can make educated decisions for themselves. We're not telling them what to do or what not to do. We're sharing with them what is available so that they can make the best choices for themselves. So I know I learned a lot from you today, and I'm very appreciative. And thank you so much for taking the time to share all your knowledge with us, Dr. Debbie.
Well, thank you. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to share this because it is such a powerful technique. When I first found out about N.E.T, I had just moved to Colorado from Chicago. I was a brand new chiropractor, and I was starting my practice, and suddenly I couldn't adjust the cervical to save my soul, and I was panicked, and I wanted some help. I didn't know that many people. I wanted a female chiropractor, and she happened to do N.E.T, and so she had me meet her at lunch, and she goes, "You know how to adjust a cervical. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing." She goes, "I bet you there's something else." And so she did this N.E.T on me, and it had to do with fear of failure. So she cleared it, and I'm like, what is this weird thing that she's doing? And so I talked to her about it, and she said, "You should really think about doing it." And I'm so glad I did because it totally changed my life in every aspect that I could possibly be. And I came back that day after seeing her, and I had a patient, and doing the cervical was like I've been doing it my whole life. And I was like, oh my God, this works so fast.
Many of my guests, when they talk about the things that they do and they're passionate about, most often they have experienced it themselves and they believe in it, and that's why they do it.
Yes.
It sounds to me like you were presented with a challenge and N.E.T was able to help you overcome it. And after you learned it, you became a professional in it. You realize how much of a difference you can make in other people's lives. And that's really what it's all about, right?
Yes, I'll be doing it until probably even after I'm no longer in practice. I just love this technique. It has just been the best thing that has ever happened to me.
And I'm sure they'll be able to get more information as well from your website.
Yes.
Get a better understanding of everything we talked about. We're going back to the fact that we get stressed. Every human being gets stressed at any stage in our lives for many reasons. And this is just another way to help overcome that and make our lives more fulfilled.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Debbie.
Thank you, Marissa. Have a good day.
You too. That's all for this episode of Live Blissed Out. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Dr. Debbie O'Reilly for being my guest. If you find value in our show, please visit liveblessedout.com to reach out, subscribe, and share on social media. This show is made possible through listeners like you. Thank you. So long for now, and remember to keep moving forward.